Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. Like others, I welcome the opportunity of this debate, and I very much support the motion, which I thought was a very well-crafted motion, if I may say so, which captured the essence of the problem, but also pointed to some of the actions that could perhaps help into the future. And I also welcome the Minister to her place. I bet she's delighted her boss has just left and that he's not looking over her shoulder at her first ministerial speech. It was very generous of him to both show support but leave at an appropriate juncture. But genuinely, President Officer, this is an important issue and it deserves an airing in Parliament, and I'm glad that Nanette Milne has secured that debate. As members may know, bird watching is a passion of mine. It's one I share with a number of other members of the Parliament across the different parties. I'm a very amateur bird watcher, but I derive pleasure from it, as do many hundreds of thousands of people in this country. And that brings all sorts of economic benefits. In my time, I managed to live in Orkney for a couple of years, which has got very important colonies of seabirds, and I enjoyed watching them there. And representing, as I do, the Highlands and Islands region, I get the chance to travel to Shetland and to Orkney and to the Western Isles and round the coast of the Highlands. And again, these are very important areas for bird populations. And if you look at the sea cliffs at any period after the spring or in the summer, anywhere around those kind of areas that I've talked about, with all the birds occupying those sea cliffs, with the raucous noise that you get, it's a truly wondrous sight, with kittiwake and gannets and fulmar and guillemot and razorbills and puffin and the like, all both displaying but also doing what they're supposed to be doing, raising the next generation of birds. And that's the very issue that's under such threat. So it is alarming to see recorded the number of declines that we have seen. But as Kenny Gibson says, that fluctuates, and there are some good years and some bad years, but the trends appear to be really quite damaging indeed. And that's intrinsically alarming, but it's also got economic effects, because people come to my part of the world to follow their hobby, and they spend money there, and with that bird population being lost, there's potential economic effects from that. But there's a much more important reason why we should be concerned, and the motion points to that, because the seabird population is a very good indicator of the wider marine health that we have, or the health of the marine environment that we have. It's both visual and it's measurable to watch and to count bird numbers, and therefore it's a very good barometer of the changes that are taking place. And it's not just about the change in terms of the health of the sea and pollution, and Kenny Gibson rightly talked about the effect, for example, of plastics in the sea, and how that can have an impact on the birds. But it's also over-exploitation of certain species in the sea. But it's also the bigger change is because of climate change, where we're seeing the seas warm. Progressively, we're seeing the food stuff that birds feed on moving progressively north. So sand eels are moving, anchovies are moving, squid are moving, sardines and the like. And those fish on the move also sometimes take them further physically from the bird colonies that depend on them, and therefore greater journeys have to be made to secure the food. There's less feeding able to take place of chicks, and that can cause difficulty. There's also changes about the salinity of the water. The nearer the top of the water, the salinity can fall, and that's got effects on the surface feeding birds, or those that tend to be closer to the surface, and that also affects the whole wider ecosystem at that level in the sea. And again, as Kenny Gibson touched on, the changes in plankton, with the warmer water species taking over to some extent from cold water species. There's a difference in volume and mass, biomass, but there's also a difference in the nutritional value. But also, those blooms that you can get of plankton may be out of sync with the breeding cycle of the birds. So again, it has an impact on feeding. It's not just on cliffs as well that we see this. I was in Shetland maybe 18 months ago and went to the Musa Island, where there used to be a very large tern colony. There is still a large number of adult tern, but at the time I was there was not a single chick in that colony. And that's typical of things that are happening in the length and breadth of the North. That's very alarming. Now, it's easy to record what the problem is. It's deciding what we need to do about that we need to address. And perhaps this is where the Minister can use some of our newfound influence within government to try and make a difference. I think there's 4 points I want to just touch on quickly. We could increase our research and therefore our understanding of what's going on. We need to redouble our efforts, as the climate change will seek to do, to combat climate change and meet the 3% targets that were originally set out. We need to look at the commercial sand eel exploitation, particularly by the Danish fleet. It's not the only reason for change, but it adds to the problem. And we also need to look at how we manage our inshore, our fisheries, and look at the potential for marine protected areas in that context. Scotland is internationally important, Presiding Officer, and I hope the Minister, amongst our many priorities, will give this matter attention and action.